Most of us got used to playing our standard chords in the same way as we did when we started learning how to play the guitar. But recently I wondered if there are more efficient ways to change chords that I never thought of because it had become a habit. In this video I want to experiment with different ways to change chords and see if there are some concepts that we can use to change chords more efficiently, and to notice early if we might be changing chords in a too complicated way. I'm Simon, I'm a professional guitar player and started this YouTube channel to teach and learn more about the guitar. Let's see if we can gain some insights about chord changes. I first started to realize that I had become a bit too accustomed to my standard chord fingerings when I began teaching beginners how to play chords on the guitar. They played chords with different fingerings than I was used to, and I caught myself thinking, oh, that is wrong, you don't play chords like this. But then I asked myself if I had been too stuck in my own patterns. Then, when I played a few shows after that, I discovered some very interesting alternatives for changing chords. Here's an example. When I changed from an open E major chord to an A major bar chord, this is how I used to play the chord change. I noticed that these chords have exactly the same structure, and the E major is just shifted up by 5 frets, but somehow it felt very uncomfortable to change between them. So, if you leave out the first finger, which you use as your bare finger, you notice that you'll have to change every other finger in order to play the A major bar chord. I demonstrate that by first changing every other finger and then shifting up to the 5th fret for the A major chord. Then I thought, why would you do this? This is so complicated. As I changed down to play the E major chord again, I simply released the first finger and left every other finger as it was, just shifting them down to play the E major chord. That made things a lot easier. But then I concluded that there were probably more inefficient chord changes, which I would have to observe. So my next assumption was that if I wanted to change chords very efficiently, I would likely need to not release fingers that play a note, which is also included in the next chord. For example, if you change from A minor to D minor, both of which include an A note, I used to change them like this. But now, if I leave that third finger in its position, I can also change these chords like this. Did you see how there is now less movement in comparison? I want to investigate a bit to see if there are more interesting ways to change chords. Let's look at a very common chord change. We're changing from A minor to C major, and we will not move the fingers that play the C and the E of both chords. I can move my third finger from the A to the C, but I can also use my fourth finger to play the C. In this way, I don't need to cover the distance with the third finger, and I can also prepare my fourth finger to play the C above the A string. Let's look at another example. If we play our standard C major and G major chords, the most common way to change between them is this. Both chords contain a G, but as G is an open string and we don't play any G on the E strings, every finger has to change. And here comes my second observation. Your chord changes seem to be more efficient if you leave your fingers in the same fret. This principle can also be found when playing scales on the guitar. So, If we do this, we can change from C major to G major like this. I have to say that if you're beginning to learn this instrument, playing a G major with your fourth finger will probably be harder than with your third, because your fourth finger isn't that well trained. But as an intermediate player, this likely will be the easier variant to change. So, by now we already came up with some principles. First, leave fingers that don't need to change notes. And then second, if possible, use your fingers for the same fret when changing strings. And third, prepare fingers you need for the next chords above the string. Fourth, minimize movement. I want to underline that these are not rules but just guidelines to seek more efficient chord changes. Why do I say this? Okay, let's look at some situations where it might not be useful to use these rules. For example, if we change from E major to A minor, our standard go-to chord change will look like this. If we would take principle 1 very seriously, we'd have to leave our third finger on the E. Then we'd also have to jump across it with every other finger in order to play the other notes. And that'll look like this. I mean, this is also a possibility to play an A minor chord, but it feels very strange. Honestly, if we keep our pattern for E major and shift every finger one string up, we'll move our fingers in a very organized and parallel way. We could call changes where the pattern remains the same a parallel movement. But sometimes it can also make sense to use a chord fingering that feels a bit awkward. We can also leave the E note when changing from C major to E major. By using this method, our change will sound more legato because one note will not stop sounding as you don't release that finger. But if you do release it, you'll have a slight gap. Okay, as we've learned a lot about alternative ways to change chords, I will once again try to summarize what our results are. First, leave fingers that don't need to change notes. Second, if possible, use your fingers for the same fret when changing strings. Third, prepare fingers you need for the next chord above the string. Fourth, minimize movement. Fifth, use parallel movement by shifting patterns that are also represented in the next chord. And sixth, observe every chord change for better options. So, I hope you can get something out of these guidelines, and I would also be happy to know what your experiences with these methods are. If you see any other options to change chords more efficiently, please let me know or leave a comment under this video. Also, make sure to subscribe to my channel so you won't miss any video I release here. I hope you enjoyed this one, and you'll be back for my next video. See you!